Yes, we are being live streamed.
All right. So welcome to Shifting Paradigms, the Dowsing Mastermind. This is a weekly show every Saturday at 3 p.m. Pacific. I'm Tyhson Banighen. I'm an energy detective. And I like to think about what we are going through in massive change, both personally and transformational. And this is my friend Charlie Riverman, and he is an earth angel, particularly interested in the waters inside and outside of us and ceremonies that can help bless the waters of life. So we're just having a pre-conversation about so much changes going on in the world outside of us, but the one world we do have control over, which allows us to practice that we are true masters of our destiny, is our inner world. What do you think of that, Charlie?
That's beautiful how you said it. And I thank you, for the waters as well, because we are on a molecular level, depending on who you talk to, 90 something percent water on a molecular level. So it's very important. And we were talking about how many people right now are in some sort of anatomical distress. And I know in my own life, I'm feeling that. My beloved wife is feeling that. Thank you. And so as we move through this unfolding story, we'll call it a story that we're going through. It's not a fairy tale, it's real. But as we go through all the changing of the planetary networking and inners, we are also changing with our own network and inners. And what I was thinking about was how each of us, Tyhson and I, use different modalities to assist or alleviate or bring certain molecules of our body together in order to have a greater capability of defending itself from external challenges. So with that said, as we look at what we're talking on right now, the computer, we didn't have computers like this 40 years ago. And if we look around, we didn't have as much health issues 40 years ago. Doesn't mean we didn't have them. We have them. If we look at the food we eat today, it wasn't processed the same way it was 40 years ago. So what I'm getting at is that over the past part of our lifetime, we have had to change, our bodies have had to change and adapt to a new way of receiving nourishment and energy from sources that never existed.
Yeah, isn't that the truth? Yeah.
So
what you're saying, the traditional sources of how we get vitamins and nutrients delivered to our body have really diminished over time. And now we're really in a more of a what we might call a restoration period, where we have to use adjunct technologies, both inner and outer, to bring about that transformation, to bring us back up to that level of health and vitality that before was relatively straightforward. Is that what you're getting at?
No, exactly. And what came to me as I was talking to you is that each of us uniquely, it affects us differently. So it's not like we could say, I'm eating such and such, or I'm doing such and such, and this causes such and such in me. So therefore, it's going to cause such and such in somebody else. Because what's happened is all of our DNA is being reacted in order to create antibodies or release stuff that's already in our bodies to fight it or to adapt to it. this is where, when I look at what we're doing with DNA, and it's a wonderful thing, and yet it's also a place where a lot of things can go wrong. Because when we do that, we're changing it not only for the immediate solution, we're changing it for the future generations and situations we're not even consciously aware that can be, because we're not really understanding fully the DNA that they say is non-valid.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting point because, we are ultimately the masters of our own lives, right? We are already, some believe, fully enlightened. There's nowhere to go and nothing to do. We've already arrived. And then we're having this fourth dimensional experience as a way to deal with emotions and that arise. And we have choices we make, whether we want to be, to deal with them in a way in which we can learn from them and let them go, or we get overwhelmed with them and they get buried and become part of the trauma that needs to be resolved now or in the future, or it becomes stress and duress, which leads to disorder and disease. That's sort of basically what this incarnation is all about, is how are we going to manage that in our world. And as you were saying, there's so much influence coming from outside of us, both environmentally and energetically, and particularly electromagnetically. We're bombarded by all these frequencies which are deleterious to the body, that we have to up level our ability to transmutation within our body to maintain our health, which would have been normal 30, 40 years ago. So one of the things as dowsers and energy healers that we've come to know is that we can do transmutation biochemically in our bodies. So for example, we can look at vitamins and nutrients and do a dowsing session to see whether there's anything that is missing. We can then look at whether we can up level that or not. What do I mean by that? Well, some of the work that was done by a dowser who's just passed on, and what he was working were there genes that manufacture, say, vitamin E in the body, yes or no? Is that genes turned on in my body to manufacture vitamin E, yes or no? If it's not on, can I turn it on, yes or no? And if it's turned on, is it turned on permanently, or do I need to turn it on periodically, like every other day or once a week or once a month? And that gives us a whole new sort of modus operandi of how we can operate our body, that we are literally in charge of that transmutation, that biological transmutation that's going on inside of us, ourselves. So it's not just popping pills, or it's not just going to the doctor, it's not giving that authority away to a third party. It's actually assuming all that authority within inside of ourselves. And the more that I think that we do that, without being overwhelmed, because there's so many choices we can make, the more we regain our health, the more energy we have, and the more that impacts the world around us and begins to be a countervalence to that bombardment of emotions and feelings and electromagnetic energy that we're being bombarded with right now. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. Thank you, because that is a key way for each of us to come back into our power. And when I say that power, I don't use it in the worldly way. I say the power within us, the pure micronuclear power that we are. In our bodies, we're sort of little nuclear power plants. We don't understand. We can't understand it, but it happens. And by being able to check yourself, I'm not saying to not trust your doctors or your healers. They know what they're doing. That's what they're trained in. but they can't tell me. They can give me a blood test and they can say my blood level, blah, blah, is such and such and such. And that's great information, but they can't tell me how to work with it, or can I connect with it? Can I speak to it? Will it respond if I do? Because when you start talking like that, they leave the room. And I've been there. So the reality is when we take back that power through dowsing and working and seeking to see for ourselves, what can we deter or determine within ourselves that is not working in a positive manner, and ask for ways to shift it to a positive manner. Everything we do does two things. It enables the body to heal, and it also confirms psychologically within us that we have more power over what we're experiencing than we ever thought we did. So
Yeah, absolutely.
back to sovereignty. And this is where I look at the world now, not trying to point the finger at anybody or anything, because there's so many, I don't have enough fingers. Even toes, I don't have enough fingers and toes to point in all those directions and say, this is the reason or that is the reason. What I'm concerned about right now this year is the peace within me. And I'm noticing, and this is my journey, but my journey is to notice when I'm not feeling peaceful. Now, that doesn't mean just I'm happy, or it doesn't mean that I'm, very calm. You start to look for, where are the distortions? Am I my hand weak? Is my brain weak? You start to look, or for me, what I do is I start to pay attention to what seems to be I'm trying to struggle with, or I'm getting confused with, and instead of the old pattern of getting angry at myself or somebody else, because that's certainly not peaceful for greater peace, to take and look and stop what I'm doing. And it can be very distorting in some people's days, of course, but to know that whatever's happening, I have more power over that than I understand.
Yeah, absolutely. So something that's coming to me is, we can see, for example, a polluted river. And I know water is really, you are the earth angel, but you really love to work with water and do water blessings. And so we could, be working with a polluted river and get really angry at how insensitive humanity is and polluting that river, and get all caught up in that emotionally, which then takes us to a lower level emotionally, psychologically, and spiritually, lowers our level, puts us in duress, which physiologically is deleterious to our body. Or we can say, okay, we don't have control over that, but what we can do, is bless the water. We can apologize to the water on behalf of humanity for the actions of not being aware that water is a living entity that has consciousness. And by blessing it and respecting it in that moment, we can literally transform that whole river at that point from being negative to being positive. And at the same time, we're blessing the waters inside of ourselves, right? And bringing a healing to our own selves that's in harmony with nature. And because it's in harmony with nature, not only nature benefits, but our inner nature benefits. So you're absolutely right. We have so much transmutative power as wizards, as hierophants, as creators, as gods in potential, that we're only coming to understand that we are gifted with this ability to do this, that we have the divine right by the mere fact we've incarnated here to do that type of work.
Right. Yeah, the intention, I look at the intention of civilization may have been beneficial in the beginning, but what we call civilization now is totally uncivilized. I can't see where that civilization word even fits anymore. And when we talk about water and the molecular structure, I'll filter your water. Now, I know you say, I live probably 2 miles from my source, if that, just up the road. And it gets filtered through a filtering system because it's the town water. And it doesn't even support this town because it goes through this town. It affects my house, but goes down around and goes to the next city next door. And because that's, again, what we're doing. However, the chemicals that they're using to process this purity of water are as dangerous as the diseases that you might catch from the water. And there's reports, and I always engage people to look and see what your water report, your like water board, what is in there. And I'm not saying it to judge it, but to look at that and realize that this is not somebody's just putting some sugar in there. That all of these chemicals have certain frequencies and they affect us. So I take my water and I filter it through 2 filters. Again, water filtering is very powerful. And what is it doing? It's drawing out all of those chemicals or modifying them so that they are no longer in a harmful structure. So again, when we do that, that's like key. I mean, that's like first grade. And Tyhson has, there's codes that you can use to bless them. There's prayers that you can use to bless the water. I do those as well. And even my dog's dish, my dog drinks the liquid water, the blessed water. There's, a prayer for
It just happens to be on my desk. So why don't we just use it? I mean, really.
Sure.
So this is called a water blessing. This is from a friend who sells a very special bamboo salt. And it says, water blessing. As I touch, hold, and drink this water, I'm opening my heart and sending love and light into every drop, atom, and particle of water within the earth, throughout the earth and upon the earth, into every ocean, sea, river, stream, lake, pond, or waterfall, that wherever water is, it will be touched by love and light and be transformed so that every living creature that drinks, bathes, absorbs, or any way utilizes water is receiving this blessing of love, light, and healing. There you are.
Thank you. And I was sending light with that to you. So if you didn't hear it and remember it, that's okay. You got it. But again, these are simple methods. I could do the water prayer that I do in ceremonies. I'll show you this bottle of water here. This is water from my watershed that I have put through 2 filterings. And then I sit it in the sun. And in a blue bottle, of course, the blue is not as blue as it could be, but if you have blue bottle water and you put it in the sun, it charges the water. Okay, and so all of that brings that, to a place of as pure as I can possibly get it. And that's what I use in my ceremonies. I do the same thing for the water that I drink. So the reality is when we put our own personal energy, our electromagnetic field, our thought that's in balance, it's wanting something positive. When we're thinking positive things and sending that positive energy into the water, it's there. It charges us. So there's like key number 1, pay attention to your water source, what you're drinking. The big thrill now is everybody drinks all of these waters, these flavored waters, all of these, sodas, these, I don't drink alcohol anymore, but all of these things with every kind of imagining flavor. And I'm sure they're wonderful. But we have to realize that as we tap into the commercial end of the world, what we're doing is think of a factory, a big factory with large machines. I'm sure they're clean and as clean as they can be, and people working there. And they're working there not because they love what they're doing. They're working there to earn a living. So the care and the thought that's going into that is mechanical. It's structured. It's, how do I say it? Organized by a higher power to do certain things.
Yeah, basically make money. So,
Exactly.
so it's on the label too. So Dr. Emoto, in the Blessings of Water, shows that any label put onto water puts that energy of, say it's the right peace, and you put it on the label on the water, that vibrational frequency of peace is impregnated into the water. So if you have, bottled water and you have the name of the label, and that the whole function of that company is to make money, not to make quality water, then that literally impregnates the water with that vibrational frequency and makes it a lesser quality water. So again, as a dowser, if you need to drink bottled water, which I encourage you not to, you can at least douse and see which are the better of the possibilities of which ones are more, what do you say, harmonious in the treatment of, and alignment with nature. So again, another way in which dowsing can be valuable in this area of determining what we're putting into our bodies and how we can transform and become masters of our inner world. Because we become masters of our inner world, that will reflect and enhance the outer world in which we inhabit.
And that's what dowsing does. Dowsing aligns us with all of the elementals, with Mother Earth, with the stars, with everything. It's not on a human conscious level that we're doing this. And I'll just share the story. When I first learned dowsing, I used to have a pendulum. I still can't use a pendulum because the energy of my brain, I know, is moving. So I use the rods. And when first time I used the rods, I thought that was crazy. This is not going to work. I'm making them move just like I did the
Pendulum.
and what happened was strange. I began to trust it. I began to look at it and realize that more often than not, whatever it was correct. I'm a evolutionary dowser, and I find water, I find energy, I create grids in the ground, whatever I need to do to dispel negative energy on people's property. But I never thought about it. Well, what about me? And so the past few years, I don't do much of anything. When it comes to being a question, I douse it. And what I've found is that when I do that, everything within me comes into alignment. And so I don't have to understand what is doing that. What it is we are actually aligning with our own energy field and listening to the response it gets. We're sending out a signal, the signal's being answered, and we respond, and we act upon that response. That's my look at dowsing. The reality is within our bodies, we can douse and say, oh, I need vitamin A or vitamin B. But again, it's like we said earlier, each one of us molecularly have many, probably millions of differences. So the key here for all of us right now at this time, where there's so much rapid change, we're not going to be able to get certain foods. We're not going to be able to grow certain things. We're not going to have land. We're not going to have water. We don't know what we're going to have. We really don't know. We have to learn what is going on within our body that is going to give us the best nutrition for the smallest amount of cash. And we have to prepare, not by hoarding stuff, but by becoming deeper aware of who we are in this molecular structure. Because this, I always look at this, and for those of you who know, I had a near-death experience. This is the vehicle. This is just the Mercedes Benz here. That's it. The I am that's in here talking, speaking, and waving it, making the muscles move, is that sovereign being that we forgot because we didn't need it in order to be part of civilization. When we were that, we didn't always do what everybody else told us to do. We were individuals, and how many tribes did we have in North America of Indians? They were all indigenous people, but there were hundreds and thousands of small tribes. They may have spoken the same language, but they were, they lived here, you lived there. They were a separate tribe. It wasn't that they didn't get along or that they did get along. What happened was, as they evolved, just like we have evolved as a civilization, we have taken what has been told to us and we have believed it because we trusted who was telling us to do this. And now when we look around, we are starting to see where what we were told no longer has the flavor of truth that it had before. That right now it's for profit rather than for purity.
Yeah, I'd like to go back to your whole idea of civilization and First Nations, because I think it's an important point. Everything that we need to sustain ourselves, because we're part of the web of life, is already in the web of life. So in other words, the food that we eat is part of the web of life. The herbs that heal us are part of the web of life, right? And so everything we need to be healthy and vital is in nature. And that's what the First Nations, that's how they live or have lived until they're being disrupted by the white man, was that apothecary, that a way of healing herself was in nature. And so along comes civilization, and civilization means walled city. It means we separate ourselves from nature, because nature becomes scary because it's wild, unknown, bears, danger. So we wall, and there's enemies that come through the woods because you can't see them. So we need to wall the city to protect ourselves. Now we've walled ourselves off from the natural connection to the earth and to the herbal remedies and to who we are as part of nature. We're no longer one with the cycles of the morning and the night and the stars and the sky and all of that. We become insulated, and therefore we then insulate ourselves from our own inner nature, and that's the source of our feeling disconnected. We all know that something's wrong. We all know that something's afoot. We all know that major change needs to happen. We're just not sure what, where, why, and how, but we all have this unsettled feeling. I don't care who you are, how many $1 million you own, what city you live in, how many toys you have. Fundamentally, at some level, there's a feeling that there must be something more. That is our connection to the source. That's our connection to nature. That's connection to the evolutionary consciousness that is evolving, on which we're an integral part, and which we have divorced ourselves through this process that we call civilized, right? Nothing very civil about it. Anyway, that's my 2 bits about that whole concept. So I agree with you, right?
Thank you.
Civilization is separation. It's separation from all of the other lies, because somehow being civilized is far more important. We need to learn all these other technologies and become superhuman and transformers ourselves, and biotic raw robots, and we need to be on the leading cutting edge of technology. That's where our future is. When in actual fact, it takes us further and further away from our ability to manage our own inner world, right?
You make me laugh, Tyson. I love the word divorced. We were divorced from nature. Yeah. I always smiled. It was it's like, I don't remember knowing that I need a divorce from nature, but that's exactly what it is. It feels like. It feels like that. You say, oh, you don't need to. You don't. We'll do this for you. We'll do this.
Right.
And
We know how to do this.
yeah. And in reality, they had to learn from somebody. They had to learn from the indigenous people because they lived in it. When they needed medicine, they knew exactly what plant to mix with the other plant and the other plant. They didn't have any words for this. They just knew that if you had a fever, this is what you did. If you threw up, this is what you did. And they were guided by their connection to nature. And we, as we created these walled cities, decided that, oh, we can do this, and we can do this, and mine's better than yours. And now, if you want mine, you have to buy mine. And we've created this whole system, which is not really working very well right now. And I'll just leave it at that. So where does it leave us to do? Does it leave us to float in the river as the river's going over the rocks, or do we become part of the river that flows off into the landscape and nourishes the trees and the fruit that are laying along the sides of the river? And right now, that's what I see is we're going right over the edge, or we're being swallowed up by Mother Ocean. Neither of which are totally bad. It's just that as we do that, if there's no source coming back through, then everything no longer exists. We're part of a cycle. And what I see is that this cycle is ending. And I think everybody is probably seeing that in some particular way. The key is
right.
We as human beings need to survive. And the way that I'm thinking it and receiving it is to look inside and say, what do I need on this molecular level? What do I need to keep this body functioning? From the brain speaking to the arm and all of these things. It doesn't mean we're not going to have illness or we're not going to have pain or suffering. That's part of the physical body. But what we do is we start to realize, if I ate more of this, my body feels better. If I stop eating this, my body feels better. And it can be a simple thing like potato chips. I love my potato chips. I stopped. I lost 20 pounds. Now, how could 20 pounds come from potato chips? I'm not saying it did, but just the lack of salt, the lack of the whatever that went into the cooking, the oils, whatever, changed something in my body that said, okay, now the rest of my body could go back to its natural business. And we look at a world now where we're just chemically driven. We're electrifying ourselves. And it's creating an inability for us to rationalize without fear or without anger.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's
electrifying. I was thinking, wow, it's like we're electrocuting ourselves, right?
Yeah.
Which is not very smart, right? The other thing, with that everything that we need to heal ourselves is already in nature. The shaman that I work with would teach us that, if you were in the jungle and you were bitten by a snake, then 6 feet of that snake that bit you would be the antidote for the snake. In other words, the positive and the negative coexist, right, in nature. And the other aspect is, so there's always that balance, right? The other aspect is, when we look at pills we take and pharmaceuticals that we take, those pharmaceuticals primarily come from derivatives, petrochemical derivatives from the plant kingdom, right? And I don't know about you, but I'd rather work with the plant and talk to the plant diva, the energy, the spirit, the vital force of the planet.
Mhm.
Plant ask for the healing powers of the plant, whether it be, in dried form, or whether it be a poultice, or whether it be as a tea, or whether it be the root or the leaf. That plant would tell me if I asked it, right? And I would be guided how to use it to do the healing. Now, there's no way on this earth that I can imagine that a petrochemical construct to match the molecular structure of that plant is going to have the same consciousness of the plant. It's impossible. Why is that? Why do we have that petrochemical facsimile of the plant? Because it can be patented. And if it can be patented, it can be sold. It's harder to sell the plant, right? Everybody has access to the plant if you're anywhere close to the wilderness where natural plants, exist. It's, if you're in the city, it's more difficult. But the point is that we have created a world more and more separated from nature and our own inner nature. The further the way we get, the more destabilized we've created a system that can't maintain itself, whether it's our politics, whether it's our society, whether it's our school system, whatever the system is, if it's not aligned with the natural phenomena of nature as a living entity, of the evolutionary consciousness of the evolution of consciousness on this planet, is doomed to failure. There's no way that it can maintain itself. It's what's called a wicked system. It means it takes more energy to maintain it, to try and fix it so it'll keep moving, than actual energy it was to create it in the first place. We are living with a lot of wicked systems. Wicked in the terms of wicked in not being positive, wicked in being absolutely overwhelmingly difficult to maintain in their present form. So we're in the midst of, like Charlie said, we're at the end of an era, we're at the end of an age where those systems must go. They will self-destruct. There's nothing we can really do to maintain them or to fix them, right? So we're into a whole new way of being,
Right,
which is about to dawn on us.
and that's part of the why we need all of this artificial intelligence and all of this robotics, because there's really no need for it. How many billion people are there in this world? 8 billion people, and many of them are starving and don't have any place to live. And again, we're creating an automatic industry of humanity, and the robots are going to have artificial intelligence just like you and me, and you'll see them on these screens and you won't know whether they're real people or they're fake. And so where does that lead us to as far as health goes? What is one of the major economies right now in the United States anyway that I see is, I don't watch television, but I think it's owned by medical, advertisements. I mean, I tune in and they've got all kinds of medicine and things to take. And I'm not saying they're wrong, they're right. They've created all of this. But the reality of all of this is, if we stopped eating a lot of the stuff that we're eating and ate healthier and exercised more, I mean, it's real simple. Tuned in and dowsed to see, is this right or not? Listening to ourselves. And so that's where the dowsing is. It's not somebody else telling us something. It's our energy picking up and aligning with those two words, yes or no. Positive, negative. Show me negative, show me positive. This is how I learned to do the rods, because I didn't trust them. I thought there was, I had witnessed it. I had a lot of knowledge, but for me to do that really was a big step. So thank you, Shelley, darling. if you watch this, for your great teaching. And in that moment, I knew that everything in my life now had a better opportunity. So it's a plug for dowsing, but it's also a plug for us to learn to rely on what our body is telling us.
Yeah, our body knows.
And that the body itself knows and has the ability to speak to us. And when we're in pain and when we're laughing, the body is speaking to us. It's the energy. And this is what I think we're all learning more and more about, and listening to inner guidance. And we don't trust that because we've been taught by the outer world that we can't trust that. So we just assume we can't trust ourselves. And it's not that we can't trust the outer world, but we have to now walk very cautiously in that world.
Yeah, we need to start with ourselves first. I mean, the message is from our body. What is my body telling me? It has two ways of communicating, either pleasure or pain, right? And the pain is something's wrong, please pay attention. Something's going wrong in the system. It may be something you're drinking, eating, or whatever, or maybe toxics in the environment. But it's a clear message that something needs to change, right? Something needs to be transformed, either by changing your outer environment or your inner environment. Maybe there's trauma, unresolved conflict, toxic emotions, things that need to be resolved that maybe need some assistance with. But your body is sending you a clear message. And, those are the ways in which we become transformed. Those are the transformation opportunities of choice that we have. And we can either be overwhelmed by them, like, oh my God, that's horrible, I don't know what to do. Or we can say, wow, this is an opportunity to look at how do I change my life? How can I do things differently? And where can I get some assistance to do that? So again, we become our own authority. We become our own masters of our own fate. We take over being the captain of the ship first, right? It doesn't mean we can't have a first mate. It doesn't mean that we can't have somebody helping us with the engine or making sure that the fuel is correct, but we are still in charge of the ship, right? So anyway, that's what we really wanted to talk about today, to get out and get some ideas about what is it that we have control over at this major change and time of transformation. We really don't have much opportunity to change the world around us now. There's too many points, as Charlie said. There's more things that could be transformed or changed than there's fingers and toes that we can point at. And where would we begin anyway? That's not to say that if you're called to do and work on one of those, by all means, go do that. You're called to do that. That's what you're being called to do. For us, maybe it's because of our age or where we are, we're being called to do the inner work. What is it that needs to be changed to transform? What is this pain all about, both inwardly and outwardly? What is the pain of the world out? What does that mean about something I haven't resolved inside of myself? So yeah, it's an opportunity for massive change and transformation. And a lot of it, whether we like it or not, it is upon us. This is the time, right?
It is.
This is our opportunity.
No, that's well said, Tyson. It is the time. And just think the gratitude and the uplifting feeling you have when you do something outside of yourself to help somebody, or to whatever your favorite thing to do is, and you're doing it for the whole, or the whole good of the world, or this group or that group, and you feel that feeling inside. We need to feel that inside of ourselves as well. So we need to also take that time to do that for ourselves, because we are needed right now to be here. We are, I always use this term, the pillars. We are the pillars for the future generation. And the story was there were 4 pillars on Earth, and I believe the story was it kept the sky from smothering the earth. They were divine beings, the mother, the father, the child, and the spirit. So, that old story, whether I just said it in the right way or not, is really what we do when we take ourselves and become that strong pillar inside and respect the fact that we need to help ourselves as well as everybody else.
Yes, yeah, it begins with ourselves. So if what we're talking about today resonates with you, you can join us every Saturday. The recordings of what we've talked about before, and we've rambled on about many different things about change and transformation, both personally and planetary wise, a lot of dowsing in there as well. Then you can head over to www.thewellnessacademy.ca and subscribe there. You have access to all the video conversations that we've had. And I think as we move forward, I'm more and more really interested in the old way in which we did it, which is a live show where people actually can phone in and ask questions. I'm thinking about actually posting the 1-800 number. So if you feel comfortable about asking a question, you can go ahead and do that, and we'll see what we can answer it for you live on the show. So until then, I hope you have a week of joy and happiness, that you understand that whatever's showing up in your life right now is definitely what you need to deal with. And don't forget, you're the master of your own world. So it's your opportunity to choose whether you feel overwhelmed by it or whether you see it as an opportunity to raise your vibrational energy and find a little bit of peace, love, and joy in your life. So Charlie, you have some last words? You have a poem?
Pleasure. Well, I do have a poem. I always have a poem. My last one that I wrote, it was part of the Global Heart team, and we were talking about, let me see if I can find it here. Okay. Let's see. Oh, no files. Is it still there? Yeah. Hope is. It was about hope. And we were at the Global Heart team. We just send love out to this year charities and people who are doing kind things in groups around the world. And we're just connecting to them and sending them loving energy as well as people. But it was about hope, the hope that people have. And so it reads very simply: hope is like the mind that ignites the candle in order for everyone to see the darkness. When the candle is lit, there's also a sense of safety and warmth. Hope is the magical resonance that attracts us all to embrace peace.
Thank you, Charlie. So with that, we'll say goodbye, and may you be filled with peace and love. Until next week, be well.
Thank you, Tyson.